Hello, and welcome to another episode of Gossip Finance, where I am your host, Alacius Inger.
And I'm Duncan Sandlin. How's it going today, Lace?
Absolutely fabulous. So what are we up to today, Duncan? Seems like we're going to do something a little different today.
It is a little different, and this is why. This is a pre-tape. So if you're saying this, it's because for some reason we couldn't do a video that week. Something happened. So given that this is a pre-tape and it's not really particular to any specific thing, I know we normally do some basic news stuff at the beginning, but I thought today we could do future news. Future news, not actual news, because we can't predict the future. It's going to be us trying to guess what'll happen.
Speak for yourself.
There you go.
I've got a crystal for that, so I'm going to look at my crystal.
You got a crystal?
And see what it tells us what's going to happen in the future.
All right, so let's do it. So my first future news prediction, when this comes out, Vladimir Putin will have died. And he will have defecated himself in his bed, and half of his cabinet will have killed each other trying to take power.
Well, geez, I don't know if my prediction is going to be quite so exciting / entertaining. My prediction is going to be that there's going to be some new variation of the whole student loan forgiveness and repayment debacle, and there's going to be some Republican somewhere that's going to be trying to stop it.
Okay. Okay. My next prediction for future news will be that Marjorie Taylor Greene actually goes after the Jewish space lasers and the lesbian cartel, and they get arrested by the FBI. Wouldn't it be amazing if that were true?
Wow. Jeez.
Yeah, I know. I don't even like her, but I'm giving her points that maybe she's right about the whole thing, and I was wrong.
I mean, anything is possible. Lasers are also exciting. I feel like what's happening in future news is also probably going to get some other government security breach, something that everybody's talking about and complaining about. I don't know who it's going to be. I can't tell. That part of the crystal ball is a little foggy, but somebody's going to screw up some sort of security thing, and we're going to be complaining about that.
Okay. All right. I got one more.
All right.
Elon Musk is rushed to the hospital after they find that he accidentally stuck his head up his own ass.
Okay, I feel like we gotta end with that because I don't even have a serious prediction that can counter that.
Well, after $200 billion, the bar is so high for him.
Yeah, I mean, there you go.
All right. So future news. Wouldn't it be amazing if any of those things become true? Lacey's actually has a good shot.
I feel like if this is like a future news cage match, then I feel like we could probably just predict a win for me because mine seem like they stand a shot of happening. And I'm not going to say yours couldn't happen, but I'm going to say it probably couldn't happen.
No, they're not going to happen. Well, anyway, we'll go ahead and we'll look at some clips. I kind of want to look at some clips just kind of just how people view finance, just in general. And we're going to start with one from Kevin Hart, and I'm going to give you a little context after we watch it. But this is Kevin Hart on Joe Rogan, and they're talking a little bit about he's talking a little bit about finance and ambition and things like that.
When you see what's out there,
like what kind? You mean physical things? Like
when you see what's out there, when you see where people are really gaining wealth and knowledge from, okay, the business relationships that you're able to acquire, the people that you're able to partner with and create certain things, different revenue streams. What I found is, as a young black guy from North Philadelphia, the biggest problem within our community is knowledge. We don't know. Debt is welcomed because it's celebrated. That's all we know. Yeah, nah, I'm gonna get that credit card. I'm gonna fuck that credit card up, and it is what it is. They gotta figure that out. I ain't got it after that. Yeah, well, you know what? I'm gonna get the student loans. They gave it to me. Then after that, shit, it is what it is. I'm gonna figure it out. And I'm putting capability in your name. You put it in my name. We can switch it up. Whatever they do it, then let's just put it in somebody else's name. It's welcome. The hustle is welcome. The knowledge of banks and what you can do or can't do is fucking. You don't even get it because you go to check cashing places. The reason why you go to check cashing places because I don't want to go do that shit with the banks. I don't trust that. Go right there to check cashing place. Let me get mine. Let me get mine now. Take $30, whatever. Let me get it. The knowledge isn't given. So it's not till you obtain that knowledge and understanding that you go, oh shit. Oh, this is why you put money up. Oh, this is how you increase versus decrease. Oh, this is how you earn on your money. Oh,
So I want to hit that because that is a phenomenal point that he just made. Is that well, a lot of the people, especially lower income people that grow up like that, they don't know how the system works. And they're constantly getting screwed by it. It's the old saying, and it's true in finance. It is really expensive to be poor. Because you can't afford to do some of these. You can't afford to park your car in the garage. You got to park it on the street. You get a ticket. So now you're paying whatever, $25 for a parking ticket, right? Oh, I can't really set up a bank account. I don't have the credit, or I just don't know how to, or there's not a bank conveniently by. So I'm going to go to a check cashing place. And then every time I cash my check, like I said, they're taking $30 out of my check.
Or I can afford to set up an account at a financial institution, but I don't make enough money to meet the minimum balance requirements. Therefore, I have to pay the monthly service fee when somebody with more money doesn't.
Right. And if you're talking about that 25 here, 30 there, if you're somebody who's making $15 or $20 an hour, $50 is 2.5 hours of your time. And that's just like that. Gone. That's 2.5 hours of your time that's just wasted out of that paycheck. Right? So he makes a good point there that there's a severe issue of, well, this shouldn't happen in the first place, in my personal opinion. But B, part of this is also we're not educating these people. And it's not something, you teach at the school. We're not teaching these basic things at the school. It's not like, when we were in school, it's like you had to take a basic class where they taught you how to balance a checkbook. They taught you how a credit card worked. I remember that I got that in high school, and it was just one day, but at least I had an idea when I got into it.
Interesting. So when I was in high school, we had to take government and economics. Government and economics was a semester class, but it was divided into 1/4 of government, 1/4 of economics.
Mm-hmm.
But in economics, I don't know that they did such a fabulous job of teaching us very high-level economics, but they actually did teach us some things about personal finance, literally balancing a checkbook. In a very, very basic sense, they taught us how to follow the stock market, like things going up and down, and some very basic things around that. So I do feel fortunate in that it was covered at all. I think they missed a lot of things, but it was covered at least some.
Yeah, but I went to a nice high school in the suburbs, and so I got a lot of that. I can see where if you went to a poorer high school, part of this too is how we fund schools, but that's a whole nother topic about how we fund schools. Anyway, so this whole thing is this whole deal with Kevin Hart here is this is part of a bit where he just got hired by Chase Bank as a spokesperson. And part of the deal he did, and I feel like he kind of got a little screwed here. I don't know the full situation. Whereas he wanted to do these videos that were YouTube video kind of things that were accessible to everybody about basic finance kind of stuff. Budgeting. Yeah, stuff like we did. What it ended up being was, and I watched all of them. There are only like 5 or 6 of them, and they're only a few minutes long each. It basically ends up just being advertising for Chase Bank. And they don't really teach anybody anything. They don't get into budgeting. they have like celebrity appearances, like athletes and shit show up and talk about being disciplined with your money, but they don't ever tell you what is a budget. How does credit work? They don't ever get into any of it. And I don't know if that was that he got nailed or whatnot, but I do know that before he did that, shortly before he did that, this happened. So, Chase Bank, who hired him, all right, and he met with Jamie Dimon, who's the CEO. This happened to Jamie Dimon not too long before he got that deal and did that video on Joe Rogan. This happened to Jamie Dimon.
So where we left off was this woman had, and I apologize, you're going to need to follow orally. She had $2,425 a month. She rents a one-bedroom apartment. She and her daughter sleep together in the same room in Irvine, California. That average one-bedroom apartment is going to be $1,600. She spends $100 on utilities. Take away the $1,700, and she has net $725. She's like me. She drives a 2008 minivan and has gas. $400 for car expenses and gas. Net $325. The Department of Agriculture says a low-cost food budget, that is ramen noodles, a low food budget is $400. That leaves her $77 in the red. She has a Cricket cell phone, the cheapest cell phone she can get for $40. She's in the red $117 a month. She has after-school childcare because the bank is open during normal business hours. That's $450 a month. That takes her down to negative $567 per month. My question for you, Mr. Dimon, is how should she manage this budget shortfall while she's working full-time at your bank?
I don't know that all your numbers are accurate. That number is it generally a starter job?
She is a starting employee. She has a 6-year-old child. This is her first job.
You can get those jobs out of high school, and she may have my job one day. So
She may, but Mr. Dimon, she doesn't have the ability right now to spend your $31 million.
Always sympathetic.
She's short 567. What would you suggest she do?
I don't know. I'd have to think about that.
Would you recommend that she take out a JP Morgan Chase credit card and run a deficit?
I don't know. I'd have to think about it.
Would you recommend that she overdraft at your bank and be charged overdraft fees?
I don't know. I'd have to think about it.
So I know you have a lot
I'd love to call up and have a conversation about her financial affairs and see if we can be helpful.
See if you can find a way for her to live on less than the minimum that I've described.
Just be helpful.
Well, I appreciate your desire to be helpful, but what I'd like you to do is provide a way for families to make ends meet. So that little kids who are 6 years old living in a one-bedroom apartment with their mother aren't going hungry at night because they're $567 short from feeding themselves, clothing. We allow no money for clothing. We allow no money for school lunches. We allow no money for field trips, no money for medical, no money for prescription drugs, nothing. And she's short $567 already. Mr. Dimon, you know how to spend $31 million a year in salary, and you can't figure out how to make up a $567 a month shortfall. This is a budget.
So that's just, I know I let that run a little bit, but that's the point. And she's kind of hit the point there, which is you make $31 million a year. You're a financial genius. You run a bank, one of the biggest banking industries, but you're underpaying your employees and you can't figure out how they're going to make up the difference. That was beyond the number of scandals that they've been in, right? That was a huge humiliation for them. That went viral. And the Kevin Hart video, is heartfelt as it was, and as much as I empathize with Kevin Hart and agree that, yeah, that's a problem, what it ended up being was for him to pitch that he was going to be the new spokesperson for Chase Bank, and they were going to do these videos to help people out, which ended up not really doing that at the end of the day. So it's all nice and well and good, and I understand that, but I think the point here is I have two minds on this. One is, yes, it would be better if we educated these people. It would be better, though, if we just made the system into a way that it was more difficult or illegal to take advantage of people like that. I think that would be a much better solution up front. On top of that fact, you don't see change until you're fucking humiliated or somebody's humiliated. There has to be some sort of forceful thing. It can't just be that we just talk to people and, oh, just do the right thing shit. Well, it doesn't work if you're stuck in a system where you don't even know what the right thing is, and everybody's, picking at you and nickel and diming you. So that would be my argument on that whole thing. But I thought that was interesting. I think Kevin James was or Kevin Hart, sorry, was in the right place. But I think Jamie Dimon is doing what he has to do to cover his ass as a business. So I don't know if you had anything to add on that one.
Right. But I mean, I feel like when it comes to the corporation, the people that are running it obviously have to cover their ass and have to try to keep their business profitable, and they're just willing to do whatever to try to save face in that respect. But, a spokesperson that's also just trying to earn their living could still simultaneously see it as an opportunity to hopefully put something positive out there, despite them possibly even understanding that maybe the motive's not so pure.
Well, I think Kevin Hart kind of did, but I don't think he really knew what he was getting into or what he was doing. Which
probably not.
Kind of goes back to his earlier point, which is that's where you get tags when you don't know what you're getting into or what you're doing. I mean, it's a little bit ironic in a sad way. I don't think it's horrible. I don't think what Jamie Dimon did here was horrible. He did eventually raise pay and all that, but it takes something like getting humiliated in front of Congress on national television to get those changes to happen. Right. And it takes, with Kevin Hart's situation, it's like, well, you didn't really get what you wanted, but at the same time, he did get a job as a spokesperson making fucking God knows how many millions doing that. So, I'm not like dogging anybody on that one. I'm just sitting there saying it's, know what you're walking into, right? I don't think there was like any ill intent. I think a lot of it was just business, but at least kind of know what you're getting into, right? If you're going to sell out, at least know what you're getting. All right, okay, now we'll come back in here.
All right, Duncan, what are we going to take a look at?
So, let's do, since we're having fun today, let's do a couple cage matches just for fun. And then let's talk about starting business. I think that would be a good one too. But let's do a cage match. So here we go.
All right, I'm ready with my ringside commentary. Here we go.
Ringside commentary. Here's a cage match. So Dave Ramsey, we're gonna do this. The guy says, "Should I use my savings to get out of debt?" We're gonna actually have some fun and run the numbers on this, but it'll be a cage match. Bum bum bum.
Shoot, I don't even have to listen to the call to know what they're going to say. Here we go.
Okay. Starting off this hour. Hey, Nick, how are you?
I'm good, Dave. How are you?
Better than I deserve. What's up?
That's great. I need you to talk me into spending my savings to pay off my truck.
Ah, okay. So what would your financial goal be?
Long term, pay the house off next and just continue to invest from there, set myself up for retirement, not have anything to worry about.
Could I summarize that by saying I'd like to become wealthy?
Sure.
Okay.
I don't really have a number in mind.
Okay, that's okay.
I have the security till the day I die and something for my kids.
You want to build a nest egg so you can retire with dignity and leave an inheritance and be generous.
Sure.
Okay, good. Those are good goals. That's what we teach around here, so that's perfect. Well, then the question becomes, what is the shortest path to that goal? That's
Not giving my money to other people.
It's, and then you start studying and say, well, what if wealthy people that started from nothing like you and me, what did wealthy people do to get there, and what is their shortest path? What we've discovered over the years is that your most powerful wealth building tool is your income, and not giving it to someone else in the form of debt is the shortest path to building wealth. Now, having said all that's why you want to pay off the house, that's why you want to pay off the truck, but you're getting some emotional security from this pile of money that's in your account that you can pay off your truck with. So what do you owe on the truck?
It's just under $24,000 that I own the truck.
Okay, and how much money is in savings?
About just shy of $33,000.
Okay, and so you'd have $11,000 left if you did this. No, $9,000.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, $9,000 left if you did this. Okay.
Right.
All right. And what's your household income?
After taxes, we even combined about $56 a month, $5,600.
Okay, all right. And so you're making about $85,000, $90,000 a year, it sounds like.
Between the two of us, yeah.
Yeah, That's what I'm talking about. So you got $90,000 income. Do you have any other payments other than your house and the truck? Debt.
My daughter's in expensive daycare, but
well, that's not a debt. That's a monthly bill.
Right. No other debt.
Okay. All right. And so if you were doing a written budget and you and your wife sat down and said, okay, if we pay off the truck, our next goal is to make sure our emergency fund is replenished because I'm really nervous only having $9,000. Truck payment is how much?
It's $411. I've been paying $600 a month on.
Okay. So we got the basic information that we need here. So he's got the truck. He owes $24K on the truck. He's paying $600 a month. The regular payment's $411. Okay. So he's got $33,000 in savings. Lacius, what is Dave going to tell him to do?
Oh my goodness. I mean, it almost even just feels like cheating. It's so easy. He's going to tell him to use it to pay off the truck, and then he's going to build back up his savings to 3 to 6 months of his expenses for his fully funded emergency savings, at least according to what Ramsey says fully funded is, and then go on from there into pay off the house, yada yada. But that's basically that's his program. That's his protocol. If he said anything else, I'll keel over.
All right. Well, let's double check real quick, and then we'll dive into it.
Then we'll jump into what the alternative plan could be.
$600 a month for 10 months would be $6,000, and you'd be back to 15 if you just put back into the account only what you've been paying on the truck. And you can do more than that.
It's smarter to roll that into my mortgage payment because I'd like to put myself on a.
No, you need to build your emergency fund back up, where you have 3 to 6 months of expenses once you're debt free, other than the house. Then I want you to start putting 15% of your income into retirement. Are you putting anything into retirement now?
No, I started listening to you at the first of the year, and I met with some of your smart investors and got a lot of great information there.
Okay.
But you're always holding on, paying off debt. And I've been hung up on this for 3 months, and I'm finally calling you. So.
That's okay. It's okay. I'm just walking through it. Here's the thing. The way this feels to you is like you're going to live with only $9,000 in your account for the rest of your life. The way it feels to me is you're going to live with $9,000 in your account for less than a year because you're going to have to build it back up very quickly. This is not really that big a move if you look at it that way.
I know. I'm just so proud of that stability because I put my wife through college and built a business from scratch and lived in my truck at one point.
Then sell the truck.
A lot of hard work.
Then sell the truck.
Either spend the savings or sell the truck.
Yeah, you need to make a call.
Well, I commute 40,000 miles a year, so I have to keep the truck. I guess I'm going to have to spend the savings.
Whatever you drive, you're destroying with that many miles. So it doesn't matter. You're going to be driving a high mileage junky truck before long anyway.
Well, that was another question I had after paying off the truck.
Well, let's get off the truck. So the guy wants to. He's convinced that he needs to get rid of the debt, and that's the big key, right? And you were right. Like you said, just pay it off, right? Then build up your savings, right? Mm-hmm. He hasn't really been saving in retirement. He doesn't seem to have much else in savings that he's talked about, at least. So the $30,000 is pretty much his nest egg. It's his war chest, his backup, right? So that's dangerous to throw that at that. But let's look at what it would look like. So let's look at Nick. I just drew it up for you guys real quick. So Nick's got $33,000 in savings. He's paying $411 on the car, or $411 is what the payment, but he's paying $600. Okay. So if we do Dave's plan, and let's look at it over 10 years, and I'm using 6% interest growth. Dave will use 12, but I'm being nice because at 12. This Dave looks really bad here. So he pays off the car. He has the $24,000. That's gone. So from the $33,000 he has in savings, he pays the car off. He's got $9,000 in savings, right? So then he takes the $600 a month he was paying on the car and invests it for the 10 years. And with the investment of the $9,000, we'll add them all together. So after 10 years, the investment value of all that money for paying off the car now, he'd have $111,000 after 10 years, right?
And what average return rate does that assume?
6%.
Okay.
I'm assuming
Dave loves to use 12, so we want to be clear here what we're using.
We're using 6 just to be conservative, but if it's 12, then this actually works out worse for Dave. 6 is actually us being nice. So that's his plan. But what are the risks of Dave's plan? Well, his savings is diminished. He has no emergency fund. So if something happens, he has to now what? Take out credit or a loan, or right? If he can't work for 3 or 4 months, right?
I mean, let's you know, throw this into Nick's equation, though. His savings is diminished, but at $9,000, he's not exactly sitting on empty. So depending on what kind of emergency he ran into, I mean, you could blow through $9,000 pretty quickly if, you know, all the things happened at once. But you have a simple emergency, and his $9,000 is probably going to be okay.
Yeah, it'll be fine. Yeah, but if something major happens, he doesn't have that, so there's a risk factor there, right? So,
sure.
right. On top of that fact, if you pay off the car that quick and stuff, it will actually damage your credit score. Not a ton, but it will. And if he's looking at refinancing a home, which is kind of what he was talking about, was getting the home payment down and refinancing. If he's doing that, then that makes that a lot more unlikely because he's damaged his credit. So he'd be paying a higher interest.
Yeah, I was going to say let's clarify there that lowering of credit score, depending on what he does with the rest of this plan. I mean, in theory, the lowering of the credit score would probably be temporary unless he really follows all the way through Dave's plan to make it so he doesn't even have a mortgage or anything.
Right.
In case it'll you know, go further down and eventually away. But yeah, it's a good point. If refinancing his home is a goal, that temporary lowering of the credit score is going to make it so he doesn't get as good of an interest rate on that. So even if he did want to use his savings to pay off the debt because he really just wanted to be debt free as quickly as possible, and if that's his priority, that's his priority.
Sure.
I don't know. It might actually be better if he's thinking about refinancing his home to refinance it first before he goes and just pays that off.
Sure.
While his credit score is probably higher.
Right. The other solution is this. So that's just Dave's plan, right? Which is, I mean, there's nothing wrong with Dave's plan. I'm gonna stipulate that there's nothing wrong in this guy's situation with this plan. Okay, it's not the best plan, and I'll show you, but there's nothing wrong with it. It doesn't really. I mean, like you said, he's still got $9,000. He's probably going to be okay. The risk is a little bit higher than I would feel comfortable with. I'd feel better if he had the 33,000, but you know, that's what it is. I mean, if he's willing to take that risk, that's on him. But let's look at what his current situation.
Depends on what Nick's genuine priority is. You know, what's his actual priority? You know.
Well, right. Well, this is how you do a financial plan, though. When you talk into the client, these are your goals. These are your priorities. Let me show you what it looks like. Let me show you projections of what it potentially looks like in each scenario, and then you pick the one you want. Right. The difficulty with this kind of thing with Dave is there's never any analysis of any other scenario. It's always just the one. You're going to do this based on my 7-step cookie cutter plan, right? So there's never any real analysis. So if we're looking at it, let's do an actual analysis, and I'll show you.
Right. There's no menu of choices being presented.
Right. Exactly. So let's look at it. So on his current plan, what he's currently doing, he pays the $600 a month, and after I figured about 3.16 years, he'd have paid off the car. Okay? So less than 3.25 years. He'd take the $33,000, keep it in savings, and invest it. And then after 3.16 years, he'd take the $600 and he'd invest that for 6.84 years, right? To meet the same 10-year plan we did with Dave, 10 years, right? So he'd have paid off the car and he'd have invested for the rest of it, just like Dave's plan, only he'd end up with $118,000, as where Dave's had him at $111,000. So he's actually up, all things being equal.
And he still does not have the consumer debt.
Right. And furthermore, he doesn't have to, and he doesn't have to get rid of the 33, so he always has that there, which is a much bigger cushion, right? But let's look at the other side of that coin, which is, okay, so 118 to 111, you're like $7,000, not a huge deal. But that's the reward. What's the risk? Well, the risk is he's got the savings amount is the same, and plus he's got the growth. His credit score is going to be pretty much the same, if not a little bit better. And it's a little bit better to refinance the home at a better interest rate. So it's more likely, right? So on the risk side of it, he's a lot better off. He's not giving up as much. And the difference in the result is, in the lower risk idea, which he's currently doing, he's $7,000 richer, all things being equal, right? On that scenario, we change the interest rate, he'd be even more richer. If it was higher, if it were 12, it would be a lot more than 7,000. It'd be like 20, right? But he's also taking less risk. So it's a much more attractive deal, right? You're basically getting the same thing, if not a little bit better, for less overall risk. And a better option for your credit score and a refinance. So that's scenario 2, right? I think I did. It's scenario 3. Let's just do a hybrid plan, right? And a hybrid plan, I'm just saying, okay, so he pays the $411 a month on the car, the minimum payment, for 4.5 years to pay off the car, is what it would take. He's got the $33,000 in savings, and he invests that, plus the $189 a month. The excess, because he's paying 6, right? So it's the excess from 6 to 411. So he invests the extra $189 a month with the $33,000. All right, and then he raises the investment to $600 a month for 5.5 years, the time after he sold the car, after he's paid off the car. Sorry, right? So his 10-year investment value would be $120,000 after that time period. So he'd have done even better just paying the minimum payment and investing the money, the excess, and his savings amount would still be growing. He'd have the extra money. His credit score would probably be a little bit higher, and the home refinance would be in a better position because he'd have paid the loan off in correct time and not paid it off early, which actually harms your credit score. So he would have even a better credit score going forward. So that's even less risk with a better potential situation for the house, and he ends up with more money at the end of it. So the question then becomes, what's the priority? And if it's, what's his name? What was his name? Nick? Yeah, Nick in Missouri. Yeah, so if Nick says to me, hey, Duncan, I just want to get rid of the debt. I don't care. I just want the debt gone. I'd be like, that's fine. I just wanted to show you what the options were. If he says, well, I want to get it done. I don't want to wait 4.5 years to pay it off for whatever reason.
Right. He very simply might be like, I really just don't feel like making this car payment for 4.5 years. And
right.
That's okay if that's his priority.
And if he says, yeah, but the 3 years I could handle, that's fine. And I'm like, then good. Then let's just stick with what you're currently doing. If his thought was, well, I would like to be in a position where I have more in savings, well, then we should be doing the hybrid version, the last version, right? Really comes down to what the client wants. My point is that when you break it down, they're fairly comparable, but there is a different risk level to each one. Dave's plan is the highest risk with the lowest potential reward. That of these 3. What the guy's currently doing is right in the middle, and just throwing in, I just threw in a hybrid just to see. That plan actually has the least amount of risk with the best credit potential and the highest growth reward. So
actually what he's already doing.
Yeah. So, I mean, just if you're doing just a basic financial perspective, you always want the lowest risk for the most potential reward. I mean, if I had 2 stocks and I said, hey, Lacey, stock A will earn you 2% a year, but there's a really high risk that it's going to tank and you're going to lose all your money. Stock B will give you 10% per year, and there's almost no risk that it'll lose any money. Which would you take?
There's very little chance of going with what's behind door A. I can't imagine why I would do that.
But that's what's happening here. Is Dave's recommending door A. So that's just basic kind of stuff. So yeah, once again, another easy win for the cage match. So that's just basic kind of stuff. So yeah, once again, another easy win for the cage match. But since we're just having fun today, I actually have another cage match. So we'll do round 2. You ready to go?
All right, round 2. All right, so let's do another cage match. Hopefully this one is at least a little bit more challenging on my end because that prediction was so simple.
Well, I think this will be interesting because this one I think he talks more. But they're talking about the guy is asking, should I pay off my mortgage or invest money? So it's a similar kind of scenario, but Dave's justification, he feels more of a need to justify it in this one. So that might.
So we maybe get a little bit more out of Dave in this one, maybe more detail
On why his strategy is this way. Yeah. Oh, shoot.
Hey, John, welcome to the Dave Ramsey Show.
Hey, thanks for taking the call.
Sure. What's up?
I got a question. I have been able to save up quite a bit, a decent stash of savings, and the only debt I have is a mortgage. I've always been an avid investor, and I was lucky enough to get locked in at a low rate, 3.25%. So just curious your thoughts. Having a difficult time convincing myself to pay off my mortgage with such a low rate.
How much do you owe on your mortgage?
About $180.
Okay. And how much is the non-retirement nest egg?
About $90.
Okay. And so you don't have enough to pay it off?
Correct. So I've been trying to decide, does it make sense to just throw that chunk at that?
Okay, I got you. Even though it doesn't pay it off. Okay. And what's the home worth?
About $520.
Good. Okay. And how much do you have in retirement?
401k about $150. Mm-hmm. IRA and Roth at about 100.
Okay. How old are you?
35.
Okay, good.
Oh, wow.
What do you make a year?
No, wait, let's do that.
Household income is 140.
Oh, great. Yeah, you're in great shape. You're doing great, man.
All right, yeah.
Well, here's what we teach, and then more importantly, why we teach.
Come on.
Okay, what we teach is a thing called the baby step.
Oh, that was weird. All right. So yeah, the guy's doing really well. He's 35, making $140,000 a year. He's got quite a bit saved.
So
yeah.
Let's see if I feel like the caller was not as easy to hear. His voice was kind of quiet. So he has $90,000 he can do something with, right?
In savings.
And in savings, and he owes $180 on the mortgage.
On the house.
Did I hear that?
Yep. On a $520,000 home.
Okay. Wow, he's doing great.
Well, he's making $140,000 a year. And we don't even know.
Yes.
We don't even know if he's married and what his spouse makes or any of that stuff. So.
And I didn't catch him saying anything else about other debt or whatever. It sounds like it's just the home situation.
It looks like it's probably just the home. If you're making that much money, it's probably just the home, unless you're really being careless with spending.
I was going to say there are a lot of people that are that make a lot of money and have a lot of debts all over the place because they're not paying that much attention. So you know.
But yeah. I mean, of course, Dave's going to say just pay down the house.
Yeah, Dave's going to say just to pay down the house, with the exception he's going to obviously want to make sure that the person isn't disrupting their emergency savings. And I can't help but wonder if Dave will bring up the idea that you, well, maybe he won't. Anyway, I'll follow that thought through.
Okay.
I'm curious if Dave will want to bring up the idea that once your house is paid for, you wouldn't need as much of an emergency savings because your monthly output need would be lower. But he may or may not bother to bring that up since this isn't enough to literally pay off the home.
Well, I think
but I just wonder, as part of like following the psychology of his rationale of his system, if he will want to go there.
I think the thing is too is the guy has quite a bit in retirement savings, and he's got that he could loan against if he had to, and he's the guy's making probably $10,000 a month after tax, just himself. We don't know if he's married or anything, so I'm sure he doesn't need a huge emergency fund. He's got enough income coming in that he could replace it pretty quick if he wanted to, or at least a significant chunk of it. The question is what is the most intelligent thing to do here? But Dave's going to do this, and Dave's going to justify it. And I think it's interesting because we looked at the first guy who him and his wife together were making around 80 grand, maybe 90, right? And they had kids, and and he had a business and all that stuff, right? But that was gross, is what he was talking about. So they're living on a lot less. This guy's making 140 just by himself. If he's married and his wife's making money, they're probably doing pretty fucking well. Right? So it's a different scenario, and and the way he talks to him is different. I think it's interesting. But we can look at that real quick. Let's go ahead and do it. But tell me to pause at any point here because he's going to get into this a little bit.
That's where you're debt free, everything but the house, and have an emergency fund. That's 1, 2, and 3. You've done that. Then we suggest that maybe step 4 that you start investing in retirement, 15% of your household income. Are you doing that?
I am, yeah.
So you got $25,000 going into retirement accounts a year, $2,000 a month.
Yeah, but 10% in my 401k, and then about another 10% just goes into savings.
Okay, but it's not going into retirement.
Well, yeah, 10% going into the 401k.
Okay. So we suggest, I'm just trying to clarify where you were on what we teach, and then I'll go back up to one.
Sure.
Okay, so 15%.
All right, pause real quick. So.
Yeah, he's going to specify that the money the 10% that's being diverted to a regular savings is not the same as saving for retirement, because he's going to want the guy to loop back around to his workplace retirement accounts or IRAs or some such business.
Sure, and he should max out his retirement accounts if he can. I mean, I don't have a problem. My problem is this. So I did a video, and you guys should check it out, on behavioral finance. And one of the big things that's a huge mistake that everybody makes is called mental accounting. And Dave does this all the time. The problem with mental accounting is $1 in this account is equal in value to $1 in this account. $1 in my retirement is equal to $1 in my savings, right? And in fact, if he's put,
but that's not true.
No, it is true. The difference is how it's taxed at the end. The $1 in his savings is going to be taxed less because he's already paid tax on that money, versus all the money in his retirement account, if it's traditional, is all ordinary income when it comes out.
Right.
Right? Even the growth. So,
but to a degree, though, that makes those dollars, in some respects, unequal because of
when you take them out. But the point is it's the idea is, what is the value of it overall? And Dave's got it backwards, because if I put money in a savings account, I've already paid tax on that money. When I withdraw that money, right, I only owe the long-term capital gains on the growth. I don't owe anything on the money I put in. I've already paid tax on it. It's similar to how a Roth works. Now, he could be investing that money in a Roth or an IRA or something if he can qualify. I don't know. He might make too much money with his wife if he's married. I don't know what their situation is. But there are other things we can do here. But the bottom line is whether he's putting it into a retirement account or another account, the only difference is the tax. but the money in and of itself is the same going in. The idea that you're giving more weight to, well, it's in the retirement account versus a savings account, really depends on what's the goal and what's the tax. But in and of itself, all things being equal, $100 here and $100 here are still $100. They're the same.
Well,
money is fungible.
I definitely agree with the idea of taking whatever this individual's goals are into account with regards to that money. Depending on what those are, I do like the idea of him choosing something, and maybe to simplify, maybe he really wasn't being clear with us really where he's saving this money. But if it's just going into just a regular standard savings account, I would like to see him doing better than that. And if he's going to be doing better than that in investing, I would love to see some of that get some advantageous tax treatment by going into some sort of an IRA or a Roth if he can qualify. We don't know what his tax status is.
Well,
we don't know much about that.
Well, it would be advantageous because he already paid ordinary income tax on the money, right? And then the growth would just be long-term capital gains that he'd pay when he pulls the money out, right? But he'd already paid the money on the principal. Okay? The other beauty of it is if it's in a private investment account or a private IRA even or anything like that, unlike a 401k where you have whatever 20 or 30 options and that's all you get, and they're usually very expensive mutual funds. They're usually 1% to 2%. I've seen some that are like 2.5% or 2.7% fees. Instead, you can invest that into actually better funds that lower fees, and you can diversify it more. You have more options. You can create a better portfolio in a private investment account, just an investor account, right? A brokerage account, than you can in a 401k. Because in a 401k, when clients come in with a 401k, you have 20 options. That's it. That's all I have to build a portfolio. If you come to me and say, well, build a portfolio in an investor account, it's like, fuck, I have millions of options. Right? And the tax advantages are different depending on what the situation is. But in an investor account, yeah, you just pay long-term capital gains on the growth because you've already paid ordinary income of the money you put in. Right? As where with a 401k, if it's traditional 401k, right? Every dollar you take out of that, the growth and the money you put in, all ordinary income tax. So depending on your tax situation at any given time, it could be higher. My point is that it's the money in and of itself is fungible, and you can't put more weight to one to the other without knowing more of the details. Because the only way you put weight to it is by what's going to yield the most money. But if they're both yielding the equal amount of money, who gives a shit what the account is or what the name of the account? If it's retirement or if you name it, Duncan's fund money, it doesn't matter what the name of the account is. It's still equal amount of money. But that's what Dave's not getting is it has to be retirement. It has to be put into that category. And that makes it different money somehow when it's not. I'm just saying he's just being dogmatic about something that should be really simple.
Well, maybe he will, but he has not yet really explained why he is having this leaning toward it being earmarked in this way. If he paused to talk a little bit about the tax benefits,
he's not going to
either or Roth or whatever, then he could make that make sense. But otherwise, he just seems to arbitrarily be valuing something differently without offering any explanation as to why he might value something differently. Because I am a huge proponent of sticking in one of those retirement accounts, depending on the goal, of course. But that's because of a tax treatment situation more than anything.
Right. He's, like I said, this is what's called mental accounting, behavioral finance. It's when you don't equate things, when you say something is more valuable. This dollar is more valuable because it's in the red jar than the dollar that I put in the blue jar.
Right.
Right. They're not. They're the same. They're both a dollar. But he's not going to get into the tax stuff. I'll tell you that right now. He is going to try to justify it, but it's going to be weird. And so, like I said, Yeah, just whenever you feel the need, you just tell me to pause, and you can jump in and explain this to me.
Okay.
I'm going into retirement is what we would recommend. And so that would mean you would put 10% in your 401k and 5% more into Roth IRAs and good mutual funds. And in your 401k, you'd be in good mutual funds. That's maybe step 4. 5 is kids' college. Do you have kids?
I do.
And you need to save for the college, right?
Right.
Is there something independent of what we've talked about that's covering that I don't know about?
They do have 529 plans.
How much is in those?
About 75 between the two of them.
And they're how old are kids?
5 and 8.
Okay, so you got a really good start there. Good. So we can kind of check that box, and you just keep adding. You've been adding systematically to that, it sounds like, and you keep doing that. 6 is pay off the house early. So above 15% going into retirement and above kids' college check, we would say throw everything at the house, which is the $90,000 that's in discussion here, unless you don't have an emergency fund. If you don't, we'd use some of the $90,000 for that and throw the rest at the mortgage. Why would I do that? Okay, and the reason is very simple. As we've studied millionaires over the last 25 years, and we just completed the largest study of millionaires ever done, over 10,000 of them, we find to start with that somewhere in the neighborhood, 79% inherited nothing, and somewhere in the neighborhood.
There it was. You got it? Now it's explanation.
So, okay, well, now I'm pausing because I'm gonna offer, another round of my prediction here. He's going to, as he's talking about this study that they did, he's going to talk about a statistic that they have pulled from it, suggesting that most of these millionaires have paid off their home in somewhere in the 10 to 11 year range, give or take, like around a decade or so, pay off their house. So he's going to utilize that as evidence for becoming wealthy, basically.
Right, as opposed to they paid it off because they had the money. Then they could.
Right, but he's going to cite the time component of it and then loop it back to his strategy of throw everything else at the house because it gets you to the payoff in the 10-year mark, and that's what the millionaires that we studied are doing, etc. So that's...
I don't know if he does that. I don't remember if he does that, but he does go into this. This is the study is basically... He's saying the study basically proves the whole thing, even though the study itself is bullshit, and we know that.
90% inherited not enough to make them millionaires. So 90% of millionaires, in other words, are not millionaires because of inherited money, but because of their habits and what they...
That's also kind of not true. Oh, shit. Hang on. Did I just lose that?
Million is 401k and a paid for...
No, fuck me.
Would I do that? 6 is pay off the house early. So above kids' college check, we would say throw everything at the house, which is the $90,000 that's in discussion here, unless you don't have an emergency fund. If you don't. Okay. And the reason is very simple.
All right. I'm going to start there again. Shit. That sucked. Sorry about that, Lace. So we'll go back on that a little bit. But the thing with he does the inheritance thing. We just saw it. We'll see it again here in a sec.
Just state the what may or may not be obvious to the casual listener. You might not have stopped and thought about this when Dave's talking about how 90% of them did not inherit their money. That probably is true. However, let's remember, in order to have inherited money, technically somebody has to have died.
Right.
If you happen to have family members that have a fair amount of money and are giving it to you in a plethora of ways that they are living, these are not inherited funds.
Right.
Therefore, you could have started with very many advantages economically through your family and not through your own elbow grease and work. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that if you have that advantage.
No.
But you didn't inherit it because nobody died.
Right. So that's once again, that's one of the big problems with the study is it's not really a study. It was a bunch of surveys they sent out. Right? So they're self-reported. So if you send a bunch of surveys to a bunch of millionaires, right? And the millionaires that they're talking about are people who are net worth $1 million, which means half the money is probably in their house And then the rest is, retirement savings that they have through their work. And most of these people were making good livings. We're not talking about somebody who was making $50,000 a year. We're talking about people that were making 80, 90, 100, 140 like this guy, right? We're talking about the top 20% of the country, right? So it all works. It all sounds great and wonderful if we're talking about the top 20% of earners. If we're talking about the bottom 80% of earners in this country, people making less than $70,000 a year, right? Then it's this shit is all it doesn't work, and it's bad financial planning. And even then, even when he does this, it works for them, but it's not always the smart move. And I'll get into that in a second. But I think it's interesting to go through what he's talking about. But let me do this. So let's look at John real quick in Chicago. So he's got 90,000 in savings, right? He owes 180 on the house. The house he values at about 520,000. And I did this. So the 7-year value in the home, if the home grows at 6%. So 6% is what we're tacking everything to right here. The home would be worth about $782,000 over 7 years. Okay? Are we good with that? All right. So let's do Dave's 7-year plan, because he's going to do this in a second. We'll talk about it over 7 years. So you pay the $90,000 to the house, right? So that savings is down to zero. The house pay.
I have to pay the full $90,000. Is this $90,000 above his emergency fund? Like, does that really drop him to zero? Because that wouldn't be part of.
Well, he doesn't really specify. So I'm just guesstimating. Okay, I'm just going with what's available to me. All right. Okay. Plus the guy's got enough in retirement. He makes enough money that I don't know what the situation. My estimate on a 30-year house payment for, I guessed, $520,000 house at the rate the guy said he had. The house payment would be about $27,394 a year, right? So whatever is $2,300 a month, whatever that is. So if he did that and he paid that, he'd have the house paid off in 3.5 years. So he paid 90 down, so he owes 90. He's still paying the normal amount. He'd pay the house off in 3.5 years. And then for 3.5 years, he'd invest the $27,394, right? And I did 6% just to be consistent. He'd have $103,000 at the bottom in his savings for paying the house down in 3.5. So in 7 years from now, he'd have $103,000 and he'd owe nothing on the house. Okay? It's not bad, right? So he'd owe nothing on the house. Equity on the house would be $781,887 would be the total equity, because he'd own it all. It'd all be equity. He'd have $103,000 in savings. So he'd have $885,000, $176,84 net. That would be his net total of just the house and the savings, not including his retirement or anything else. So he'd be in really good shape. He'd be 42, and just the savings in the house would be worth almost $1 million. Plus what's in his retirement, he'd be over $1 million net worth.
Right. We can assume he'd be shocked over $1 million because we haven't added anything in for his retirement here.
Yeah, we haven't added anything else. So yeah, so he'd be in great shape. So really, it doesn't hurt him. Okay, well, let's look at it from if he just did what he's currently doing and nothing else, right? So he doesn't pay anything down on the house. He just owes the $180,000 that he owes. He takes the $90,000, invests it at 6%. Was what I did. Still paying the same house payment, $27,394, right? And he's not adding anything to the investment because he's got to pay the house payment, right? So there's nothing added. It's just $90,000 invested. All right. After 7 years, he'd still owe $13,661 on the house. So that's not that much. He's paid down $180 to $13,000. So you have the house paid off within another year. Less than that, 6 months, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. Equity on the house that he'd own minus the $13,000 would be $768,000, $226,000, but he'd have $135,000 in savings from the investment. So he'd have a net worth of $903,000, right? Over Dave's $885,000. So he'd be up $18,000, right? So it's kind of one of those where it's like, it's either way you want to do it, man. At this point, I don't think it's a huge risk for him to put the $90,000 down on the house. He makes a ton of money. He's got money in retirement he could loan against if he had to. If worse came to worse, wouldn't be a huge deal. He could pay it back probably pretty easily.
Ironically, I feel like we keep saying the same thing over and over, that so much of this boils down to what your actual goal and
what
desire
you want
is. Because these two plans, I mean, in terms of the net total at the end, you definitely get the higher dollar amount, so I would put this in the win column for you. But to be honest, he looks good in both of these scenarios. Like, these both work out well for him.
Right, but the difference between him and the first scenario is he makes a lot of money, so he can absorb a lot more risk. That's the fucking main difference. All right? If I am doing Dave's plan and I'm talking to a guy who makes over $100,000 a year, Dave's plan isn't the smartest plan, but it doesn't put them in like any untoward risk necessarily. If I'm talking to a guy who makes a lot less than that, who makes $70,000 or less, Dave's plan not only is not the best plan, it puts them in a fuck ton of risk. That's the difference. But he never ever specifies that. It's always, well, if you want to be a millionaire, do what I tell you. That's my point. It's not subtle even, really. If I'm talking to guy A who only makes $60,000 a year, and I'm talking to guy B who makes $150,000, we have very different conversations.
Right.
I don't tell them the same fucking thing. Because they're not in the same position. Right?
Right.
That's
their
the point.
ability to absorb risk, to deal with, random things that happen and just aren't the same.
Right. If I'm talking to a guy who's makes all of his money, or a woman doing something that's physical, right? Then we really need to have a talk about, well, what happens if you get injured? Right? As opposed to a guy who makes all his money like kind of like I do, where I mostly just talking to people and sitting at a desk. It's intellectual. I don't have to fucking lift things.
Right.
I don't have to be on my feet all day. It's a whole different discussion. If I have a disability, it's like, okay, well, I can do most of my work remote or from home. It's not a big damage. But if I'm the kind of guy who works in construction, or I work in retail, and I've got to be physically there and on my feet, different conversation. That's my point, is it's the same answer. Doesn't matter who we're talking to for Dave. And his justification is, well, we did a study. First off, A isn't a study, it's a survey. And it's self-reported. B, they've never published the data. It's never been peer-reviewed. And C, all these conclusions he's drawing from it are just whatever they want to draw from it.
Duncan, they actually, you can get a PDF of that study.
We've discussed this a couple times. I've read it.
Okay.
They don't release the data, and it hasn't been reviewed. They just give you their conclusions. They don't give you the data.
Oh, huh.
You can't review the survey answers.
Interesting.
Which is what you do when you don't want.
Right. They only give you the manner in which they have
interpreted it.
Assessed the data rather than the actual data itself.
Yeah. Which is what you do when you don't want people to double check your work. So we'll just finish this up real quick with him, and then we'll go into the Shark Tank thing.
As we've studied millionaires over the last 25 years, and we just completed the largest study of millionaires ever done, over 10,000 of them, we find, to start with, that somewhere in the neighborhood, 79% inherited nothing, and somewhere in the neighborhood of 90% inherited not enough to make them millionaires. So 90% of millionaires, in other words, are not millionaires because of inherited money, but because of their habits and what they do with their money. And the two primary things...
See, that's, once again, like you pointed out, just because they didn't inherit the money, because somebody didn't die and leave them the money, doesn't mean they weren't given a lot of money. Right? But what he does is he skips that and goes right to my assumption, which is, or his assumption, sorry, which is, oh, well, it's just because they're just so good with money. It's their habits. They're just so good with money. See, it's all bullshit. It's just whatever they want to read out of it.
We see that those habits that cause them to be successful, meaning hitting $1 million net worth and above, is the primary initial levels of wealth. The first $1 million or $2 million is 401k and a paid-for house. Now, the paid-for house not only is going up in value and stabilizes, but we do not find them saying, I'm going to borrow as much 3.5% money as I can borrow because I can invest it and make a better rate of return. We do not find them doing that. We find...
Yeah.
So I don't know if he's about to do this now, but my prediction is he's going to do this weird thing that he likes to do, where he likes to tell people that, well, if that was the case, we would just tell you to go out and take another mortgage, borrow as much money as possible against your home so you can turn around and invest it. He loves to he likes to try to spin the logic that way because he knows people will go, what? No, I wouldn't do that. And then he goes, yeah, that's effectively what you're doing by keeping this debt around.
Wait, let's, that's interesting. I haven't seen that yet. Let's run that scenario. So
we'll slow down, back up with what he says.
Well, let me try to guess real quick. I think I understood what you said, which is, all right, okay. So I have... Well, okay. So, you're the client. You owe $100,000 on the house. You have $100,000 in savings. You say, Duncan, should I pay off the house? Right? And I said, well, you could pay it off or invest it. Right? Dave's argument you're saying is going to be, well, would you take out $100,000 on a house, right? A home equity mortgage to invest. And they're the same thing. That's what he's saying. Oh my God, that's fucking stupid. No, they're not the same thing.
It's what it is it's the way that he spins it to get people mentally to jump on board his protocol, because most people are not logically going to say, let's say I've got that $100,000 in savings and I owe $100,000 on my house, but my house is worth $200,000. I would be like you saying, let's invest your $100,000. Why don't you take a home equity loan out for another $100,000 so we can invest that too, because mathematically that's better. That's essentially what Dave likes to spin to people. That not paying their house is like doing. It's like choosing to take out as much money as possible in the form of a loan in order to invest. Okay. And then he says, well, why wouldn't you do that? And then as people discuss why they wouldn't do that, well, that's really risky, etc. Then he goes, okay, well, that's exactly why you shouldn't want to have your mortgage hanging around your head in the first place.
That's a cheap trick. So the reason you wouldn't take out a home equity loan versus a regular home purchase loan is a home purchase loan is backed by the federal government. There's a lot more security protections behind that. So if you fall behind...
Let's pause. Dave won't say what kind of loan. That's not his point.
No, I know. Just to be clear. That's my point. He's
going to throw that out there.
There's a difference here, though. That's the difference. Is one is a lot more risk than the other. Right? I have a current home loan on my house. Right? A home equity loan is not necessarily backed by the federal government. They're usually not. And if you can't pay it, then they take your house. Now, a home purchase loan, where you purchase the house originally, You're not taking money off the equity. That is usually backed by Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac, which is the federal government, which is backed by the federal government, right? So on those things, it's harder for them to take your home if you can't pay it. There's a lot more repayment options. There's a lot more things you can do, and there's more things you can do in like a bankruptcy if that's the situation. So those are a lot less risky. Home equity loan, on the other hand, you're fucking fully on the hook. You go to bankruptcy, they're taking the house. You can't pay the house. You can't pay that off. Something goes wrong, they're taking the house. There's no federal protections to really help you there because it's not federal money backing it. So totally stupid. Totally, completely two different things.
You haven't heard him do that before?
No, I haven't. But it's the stupidest fucking thing I've. But I can see where if you don't know the difference, you could fall for that trap.
Yeah. It's kind of some mental trickery, but
Yeah.
I mean it's mental trickery which in some ways is effective, but in other ways doesn't make a lot of sense because behaviorally people just simply are not going to do that. So what you're offering them is you're saying, oh well, but if you like how this other scenario plays out, then you might as well just do this other thing, which is pretty much bonkers. Like that nobody really logically does. I wouldn't say nobody, but virtually nobody would do. Very small amount of people would think that that was actually a good idea and then use it to spin it toward this is why my choice is the only choice, you know?
Right. Yeah. No, but it's all bullshit. I mean, it's the whole thing with the millionaire study thing. Every conclusion they have is it's whatever they want to make up. It really is. It's whatever. They didn't inherit the money, which means they all did it just because they're so smart and they have great habits. Where did you get that conclusion? Because they didn't inherit the money, it must be because they're all geniuses. And they're all just have really good habits. Right? And 90% of the people in the study don't like eggs. So if you like eggs, you're never going to be a millionaire. It's all bullshit. They're trying to draw lines between dots that don't connect. So just ridiculous stuff. Plus, as we can see with the John Chicago situation, for a guy like that, it doesn't matter that much either way because there's not a big risk factor. But for a guy who makes with Nick in Missouri, who has less money, it is a big risk factor.
Well, I mean, John's scenario, you know, yeah, it's not as much of a risk factor for him, but also the results are relatively similar in both directions. I mean, one gets him out of the mortgage debt a little faster. The other one gets him into a little bit higher of a savings a little faster. Potato. They're pretty similar. Those results.
Yeah, but
so
when you're
kind of what he wants to do.
Yeah, but that's my point is when you're making that kind of money, it's like one bit here, two bits there, whatever you feel more comfortable with. But when you're talking about a situation where no, there's going to be a much higher risk, you can't give the same answer, but he gives the same answer both times. And one puts a guy in a horrible position where it could destroy his life, and the other, it's like, it can go either way. But once again, when you're making a lot of money, a lot of that risk just goes away.
Right.
Right? So let's do something more fun, more upbeat. Let's be upbeat. Let's watch the nutballs at Shark Tank. You know that show Shark Tank? Have you ever seen it?
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. I enjoy Shark Tank. They get some kind of crazy stuff on there, but
yeah. Well, real quick, the O'Leary guy, the bald white guy, he just got tagged with the whole Facebook, whatever it is, cryptocurrency thing. He just got raked.
What do you mean?
I don't know the full story. I know he invested a ton of money in it, and he was pitching it and stuff. And the whole thing turned out to be a scam. And then the guy who did it, he's got a big, he's a white guy with a big fro, and he's looking at prison time for scamming. And O'Leary was.
You might have to pull something on this.
Well, We'll do it later. I'll do that story if you want. We'll do that story next time, okay?
Sounds good.
Okay, I'll do that next time. But yeah, this is right now. Let's just watch them because they're giving 11 tips for investing. What they call investing tips. Really, what they're talking about is business, and if you want to start a business. And I think this will be fun because I do a lot of business consulting, and I would like to talk a little bit about if you want to start a business, what do you want to do? But they actually give generally good advice here. The O'Leary guy, not so much, but the others do.
Hi, we're the fabulous cast of Shark Tank.
Here with our top investment tips.
When I was very young, my mother said to me when I was 7 years old, they didn't know what she was talking about, but I certainly learned, never spend the principal, only the interest. Her whole idea about investing was buy things that pay you cash flow, but never touch the principal. A bond that pays interest, or a stock that pays a dividend, or real estate that has income. Don't touch the honey pot, just let the honey flow over the edges. That's interest, and eat that instead. It's a wonderful outcome. Mom was right.
Okay, so I do like the blonde woman that was sitting next to him, and she's just looking at him like this the whole time. Yeah, okay, yeah. First off, yeah, if you have that luxury, yeah, you don't want to spend the principal of your investment. You just want to spend the earnings, right?
Right. It takes a while to get to that point, though. But I mean, regardless, if that's a spot that you are able to be in, then.
But you got to have.
Right.
But to do that and be able to live off just the interest, you got to have millions of dollars invested. You know, so that's kind of a ridiculous thing to open with. That's why I think she was kind of looking at him like, "Who the fuck are you talking to?"
Right.
You know, most of the people that walk in our door are not earning enough interest that they can just live off the interest.
Right.
Right. So I think it was kind of funny look at her part. I like how they couldn't get all 5 of them together too.
Important thing is to always be learning. Understanding technology has always been really important to me, and it's opened up new doors. My first business, we were the first company in the early 90s to do streaming, back when it was called netcasting. I started the first all high-definition TV network. It's really created a lot of opportunities for me.
You need to try your best.
I will agree with that. Always be learning. I think that's just generally good advice.
Right, whether it's technology or something else, but yeah, in general, I think it's so.
Yeah, whatever it is, you should always be learning new stuff. Even if you're not making money doing it, just for you, just so you can keep growing as a person. Learn something.
To keep firing, honestly.
Yeah. Read something you wouldn't normally read.
Best to buy the real estate you're doing business in as quick as you can, no matter how small the space is, whether it be a store, an office, a kitchen. You can control your business better if you're not giving the profits to the landlords. I opened 20 offices building my business, and out of those 20 offices, I bought 3 buildings. When I sold my business for $66 million, those 3 buildings were worth more than $66 million simply because I was smart enough to buy them.
Okay, so that one is really good, but only if you can do it. If you have the money to do it, yes, buy the real estate with your business.
I'm a real estate girl. I love real estate, and I am a huge proponent of that one. However, that takes a while to be able to get to doing, honestly. And if you don't start from a place where you've got an advantage of already having money, it can take you a while to get to that spot. But I mean, even if it's a slowly but surely sort of situation.
Yeah, even if you have to take out a mortgage and do it, it's still better than just renting. Right. Because you still get the same tax deduction, pretty much the same tax deduction, but that's the deal. The real estate is at the end of the day is a big deal, and people forget that a lot. So like people think like McDonald's, right, or Starbucks, right? You think, oh well, their profit is they sell coffee or hamburgers. No, their biggest asset, the things that make them worth so much, is the fucking real estate. I had a professor who did real estate finance. Really, really smart guy. He used to work for Act 3 Theaters before they got bought out by Regal, right? And Regal's the big, you go to the movies, it's Regal Theaters, right?
Big chain, right?
Right, but it was before he worked for Act 3, and he was actually part of the deal when the buyout, right? And I remember having a class with him, and he was talking about, the thing about the movie business is it's a real estate business. And we're all sitting there going, what do you mean? And he's like, well, think about it. You rent a seat for like an hour and a half or 2 hours. That's where they think about it. So their big assets, their big worth is the theater itself, right? That lot, the parking lot, right? That's their big assets. That's what they rely on. So even when the theaters tank, it doesn't really matter that much to the investors because you're sitting on so much fucking real estate that you can do whatever you want with. There's not a lot of loss. So so she's right. If you can get the real estate, get the real estate. I think that's good advice. We are talking about people that can, like you said, can afford it, but if you can get it, I think that's good. I think that's a good tip for a business owner.
I think it's super important when investing in a business that the entrepreneurs are people that you want to be working with. I mean, it's important to me that I enjoy the person, that they're ethical, they're honest, that they're hardworking. There are certain traits that I just like, but if I don't like that person, then every day's a nightmare.
We had one company where all the sharks, the first deal where all the sharks went in together. We're looking at one of the individuals involved and their social media, they were on this vacation, this trip.
Wait, bought like a $300,000 car twice.
Needless to say, they're out of business, or he's long gone from the business.
Oh, so that was a good one too. So, just in general, it's hard to run a business if you don't like the people you're working with. Shit, it's hard to work for a business where you don't like the other people you're working with.
Right. Think about it. How many, people out there have had a job where they couldn't stand their boss or their coworkers. How long do you want to stick with that? So now turn that into your own business and you don't like the people that you either own it with or are working with there. And you're not exactly going to be inspired to put more into it. You're going to kind of want to go home and not be near those people.
Right. You're not going to want to be there. So if you're going to put your time, effort, and money, your labor, you might as well have some fun. You might as well not be fucking miserable. You only live once. YOLO.
Mm-hmm.
I learned that. See, I'm still young. I'm hip. I'm with it.
I don't know. The way you said that wasn't very hip. I was not going to say anything, but
I'm going to LOL out loud.
Oh my.
That's to invest in businesses that you understand. For me, of course, it'll be clothing or distribution or retail. I invested in a ladies' apparel company, and even though I know fashion, it doesn't mean that I know every aspect of fashion. I know men's. I am not good at producing ladies' fashion.
I invested in that company with you. We both lost our money.
That's right.
Be open to new ideas.
So that's a good point too. You don't?
Yeah, don't invest in anything you don't understand.
Yeah.
Super simple, but super true. Just because it sounds more complicated doesn't make it a better investment.
Well, plus
people themselves wrapped up in that all the time. They go, "Oh, this must be really sophisticated because it sounds so complicated." No, that's how you lose your shirt. Don't do that.
Well, plus I've consulted for lots of different businesses, and I remember the first time somebody wanted me to come and consult for a restaurant, and I never worked in I worked in retail to put myself through college. I've never worked in the service industry. Never worked in a restaurant. Knew nothing about it, right? Before I even started that job, I spent 2 weeks doing nothing but fucking research on how restaurants work, interviewing wait staff, chefs, cooks, people that worked in that industry. So I would make sure that I was not going blindly into this, right?
Mm-hmm.
But even then, there are always traps and pitfalls that unless you know it and you've worked it for a long time, you don't know what to look for all the time. Right. So yeah, no, that's a good point. I mean, you can research it all you want, and that's great, but nothing counts when it comes to like business. Nothing counts for experience. Not to say you shouldn't try something that you're not experienced in. Just realize it's gonna be a process. You're gonna learn the hard way. I mean, I've done it, so it's fine. But just be prepared. Um, oh, I actually like this one. This was a good point.
Ideas and new perspectives. Take a look at your own company. Does everybody look like you? Because if they do, you're missing new perspectives, new markets, new opportunities. Even simple things like moms selling to moms, dads selling to dads, different communities, taking somebody from that community and gaining their insights on how to sell to them or what's important to them. I mean, I can give you the best example where I didn't do it until it hurt me, and that's with the Dallas Mavericks. I made mistakes in the diversity in our organization. We were having guys that looked like me trying to sell season ticket packages to moms. And it just didn't make sense. We're trying to sell that to different communities where we didn't have representation from those communities. And, we were kind of blind to the best way to do it. Had to bring in a new CEO who opened up our eyes to really finding people who can connect to a new customer base. And we're seeing the results right now as I speak.
I believe that you should just do something you have.
That was a good point. Diversification is huge in business. You have to have other people that are different than you coming in. Granted, he's being really uncomfortable about it. What he's really saying is, we needed more non-white guys. We needed some women. We needed some minorities. We needed other people than me trying to sell tickets, right? But yeah, so those are good stuff. I mean, then they have other stuff like do something you love and things like that. But I thought those were good points right out of the gate. Did you have anything you wanted to jump in with on that, or?
No, I really like that one too. I mean, in some ways it's kind of obvious, but people don't stop and think about it, and until in business they fail to do it, and then have to sort of, just like what he's admitting to, kind of an initial failure. It's just a thing you don't particularly think about, maybe,
Right.
And then you realize, wait a minute, it really matters that I do a good job with this part. Actually,
Yeah.
Not everybody working for this organization can fit into whatever same categories. It actually won't be good for your business.
No, because you have to think about your customer base, and you can't expand your customer base if you don't have other people that know your customer base. Right. And we all grow up in different places. We all come from different backgrounds, different walks of life. So it's nice to have a diversity of people, right? It's the old what was the old joke where there was a bit in the 80s where the CIA was trying to get rid of a lot of the minorities that worked for the CIA, a lot of the immigrants or children of immigrants that are second or third generation Americans, because it was pretty racist. And there was, what was that movie? Oh, Charlie Wilson's War. And there's a point where the guy points out, he's like, oh, geez, you're trying to get rid of all these second or third generation Americans, right? Because you don't like them because they're not real Americans. And heaven forbid we have spies that speak the same fucking language as the people they're spying on. Right? Do you want to win, or do you want to have everybody look like you? Right? Which I think would bring to my things, my tips, and I'm just going to do 3. The 3 tips I would have starting in business, I want you to understand, 90% of startups fail. Okay? I'm not saying that to discourage anybody at all. Because even if it fails, it's still good experience. It still looks good on your resume. So it's not a loss to start a business and fail. Okay? On the other side of the coin, I would also say you need to focus on a couple things. These are the basic things that people screw up. Initially, you want to start out with a mission statement. Why do you want to do the business? So, like, when we started this show, we don't have like a written mission statement, but we talked about we wanted to educate. We didn't want to promise things to people that were unrealistic. We wanted to make sure our information was accurate, and we wanted to combat misinformation that was out there. Now, your mission statement will change over time. Ours has, where misinformation has now become the priority because there's so much of it that we have to attack it all the time.
Well, and furthermore, we've expanded upon those ideas to include a lot of focus on systematic issues and highlighting those and revealing what they are.
Right. We've had to address more politics and a lot more history and things and logic than we'd normally want to do. But it's important because there is so much misinformation. We have to attack it where it attacks. So yeah, but a mission statement is important to have that and keep that always in mind, right? That would be first thing. Have a mission statement. They don't have to be long. They could be a paragraph. But this is what's important to me doing the business. You have to remember though in your mission statement that the most important thing is the customer, or in our case, the viewer for the situation, because that's who you're serving, right? That's the person who's going to fund your business. They're paying you. They're the ones who are supporting you. So you need to put them first because they're the most important person. All of them. Okay. I think that gets missed a lot with business owners, especially from my experience. Business owners start the business and they have this idea it's going to be this way and it's going to be great and blah, blah, blah. And people just come and love it. It's like, yeah, but then when you look at it, it's like, yeah, the customers fucking hate it because it's all about you. It's not about the customer. Right. The second thing I would throw out is a business plan. And you can Google these, and there's lots of different ways to do these. There are two things I would like to point out with a business plan that I think are incredibly important. Is there's two facets to a business. One is production, and the other is support. Production would be the first part, would be whatever your product is. Whether it's a restaurant, your product is the food and the service and the ambiance, right? If you're making toys are the product, right? But the quality of the toy, the materials, blah, blah, blah. So that would be the first part. So your production team is the one that's creating the product for the customer. The second part, and this is the part that most business owners overlook, which is support. Your support team is going to be the people that are figuring out your bills, your taxes, your overhead, right? All the finance shit, right? They're also going to be the ones that are figuring out what is your compliance, your legal expectations, your insurance costs, right? Your human resources, right? Employment, payroll, all this shit, right? The other big thing about support is doing sales. Okay? And that's the more important part. I mean, the other parts are all really important because you don't want to get sued, get into financial trouble. But sales is important because you could have the greatest product in the world, but if you have a terrible sales team, nobody's going to ever know about it. But you could have a completely crap product and have a fantastic sales team and make a ton of money and people buy it. Let me give you an example. I bought this stupid thing to keep on my desk, and I use it as a prop for work and stuff. Why'd I buy it? Because it was really cute and I thought it was funny. And that's it. I paid $40 for this thing. Why? Brilliant marketing team on Disney's part. They caught me walking in the door, man. I'm like, oh, I gotta have that. Couldn't even tell you why I had to have it. Had to have it. Brilliant marketing team. Think about the pet rock in the 70s. People used to buy rocks as pets and dress them up and put them in cardboard boxes, and they'd pay money for that. Brilliant marketing. So production, you want to make sure that you have plans. So production, the plan is for how to develop the product, the quality of the product, how we're getting it out. Support, you want to make sure you know how you're financing all this stuff and how you're going to sell it and who you're marketing to and have a plan. So having a plan for production and support is a big deal. Most people don't do that. They just think about production. They don't think about sales. And they certainly don't think about finances and stuff, and that's where they get sued. The third thing I would like to say, if you start a business, if it's just you, you're having to do it all on yourself, right? It's just you alone. If you have to hire other people, your staff is your bloodline. They're the ones that make the business happen. And a lot of times people will undercut their staff or underpay their staff, and then they can't figure out why they can't get customers, or why their staff isn't showing up, or why everybody's pissed off all the time and everything's miserable. It's like, because you're not taking care of your staff. So if you have staff, you need to make sure that these people are taken care of. They're happy. They want to be there, because they're the ones that are bringing you in new business. It's their labor that's making this happen for you. And if they're just doing it because they just need the fucking paycheck, then that's all you're going to get. Then it's not going to further your business. So those would be my 3 big things right out of the gate. I mean, there are a lot of other things we could talk about, but those would be the 3 things. If you're starting your own business, pay attention to what are your goals with your mission statement. Keep on them. Keep adapting them. Make sure your business plan is solid. Make sure you factor in how you're producing it, how you're financing it, how you're taking care of the business, and how you're selling everything. And make sure you have plans for all these things, right? Who's my target audience? How do I want to get to them? Is the product right? And then make sure you take care of your support, your team. So,
Duncan, I want to add one thing to that.
Sure.
My tip when you're starting a business is not to be afraid to start with a smaller version of what your ultimate goal is.
Sure.
Because I've seen a number of times people trying to do too much with it right out of the gate, as opposed to start with a small sort of beta version of whatever it is that they're doing, that they can do a really solidly good job with, and then build from there, as opposed to trying to do entirely too much all at once and not doing a great job with it.
Yeah, that's a good piece of advice too. Nothing wrong with doing a test run.
Right.
Yeah. So, but I thought those were all decent tips for the most part. But you're also looking at it from the perspective of people that are worth, hundreds of millions of dollars. So it's kind of, they've got a little different advice than we did.
Right.
But anyway, yeah. So good stuff. Good show today. Good work.
Yeah, this was a fun one today, Duncan.
Yeah.
This was sort of a little bit different of a thing for us, but it was fun.
Yeah, that's all it was supposed to be. All right, well, where can people reach you?
All right, people can catch me for blog posts and information about coaching groups and programs at mysensewithsense.com. If you want further information about any of them, to connect with me or to connect with Duncan about what he's doing, you can email us. We would also love for you to email us any questions, any clips you would like to see us respond to, or topic requests. And where can they write into us?
You can write into us at gossipfinancead@outlook.com. It'll be attached below. If you're hankering to yell at us and debate us, we're actually kind of open to that now. I don't know how that happened, but just funny stuff. Anyway, if you have ideas about businesses or stuff, or you have questions about personal financial planning or starting a business, we're open to that too. I mean, we can at least point you in the right direction. So yeah, shoot us a thing, like and subscribe, and we will catch you guys all later. Thank you very much.